I spent 16.5 hours turning this fitted sheet into a full cosplay, and I did it all for under $20. Hi, I'm Arlstaria, you can call me Star, and I am a cosplayer, crafter, and general just textile nerd, and I have been cosplaying since like 2017. I decided I want to challenge myself today. You see, I have noticed in the past few years this surge of mass-produced cosplays, and actually when I started cosplay, my second cosplay ever was bought online because I was not going to sell that. That would be insane. There's really nothing wrong with mass-produced cosplays. I buy cosplays online. I've done it in the past. I will do it in the future. You know, there's nothing wrong with it. But cosplaying is really expensive. And of course, when I was thrifting, I saw this fitted sheet. You know what I thought? I thought to myself, you know who would be really good, like a good cosplay to turn this fitted sheet into? Yeah. One of the cosplays that I've always wanted to do for the longest time and just never got around to it was Enkidu from, I think I first saw them in Fate Grand Order, but obviously Fate Strange Shake has recently come out and I have gotten more amazing content of my Anyway, I'm so normal about them. So yeah, I'm going to be sewing enkidu today, and you will see how I did it. So my challenge today is to sew an entire cosplay for under $20. This price includes fabric, notions, and any accessories that the character might have. This price does not include the wig though, since that would really tighten my budget and make this challenge nearly impossible. I'm just doing the costume, and I'll be wigless, you know. Baddies don't need wigs, baddies cosplay with their real hair, what do you mean? So the reason why I chose enkidu when I decided that I wanted to do this 20-euro project is because his design is really simple. Also the fact that I've literally wanted to do this cosplay for like over 8 years, but we don't have to go into that. Just in general, like from a costume design point, enkidu's design is really simple, which makes sense because he is from Uruk, which is a very primitive civilization that Gilgamesh is also from, but Gilgamesh did not suffer from this very simplistic design choice, so I wonder what that is about. But yeah, it's a pretty simple design, which when you are starting out with making it easy cosplay, choosing a simple design will really help you stay in this budget. So if I go over this budget, honestly, that's my own fault. Stop what you're doing! I know that everyone hates ad breaks, and I get it. But if you want to support me and you enjoy what I do on this channel, make sure to give a like and subscribe to the channel so you can see all the other projects that I plan to do in the future. Additionally, if you would like to join in on this project with me, I have my Amazon storefront linked down below where you can find just a ton of supplies that I've listed, not only videography supplies, sewing supplies, beginner sewing machines, and even like crafting and wig supplies. So if you're a new cosplayer and you really don't know where to start and what materials you might need, I have a ton of recommendations that I think you'll find very helpful. So go look at my links down below and remember to subscribe and like the video, and back to the sewing. So to start making this cosplay, I decided to seam rip all the seams, and I took the elastics out of the corners of the fitted sheet and I saved them for later, and you will see what I ended up doing with those. Patterning the top that enkidu wears is really easy. I only took 2 measurements, which was from my shoulder to my mid-calf and my mid-chest to my wrist. So I folded this sheet in half so that it's like a sandwich one way. This is the folded edge, and along the folded edge I just need to make a mark to find the center. So based on the measurements I took out from the head hole, I need to measure 72 centimeters. And then I'll mark that on both sides, and that will be the length that the arms need to be. It's a little bit off, it's like only a centimeter, so it's pretty close. I think I'll go with the longer length so that everything is even. Okay, so looking at this reference, we can see that the collar around the neck is actually very similar in shape to just a regular scoop collar, so I'm going to use this t-shirt as kind of a blueprint for mapping it out on here. So I accidentally forgot to hit record, but I'll explain to you what I did. So what I did first is I fixed up the neckline and I marked where I want my cuts to be. I made a shallower mark for the back. And then what I did was I cut through this folded edge with this shallow mark all the way to the back and took this piece off. So then now the front and the back both have this shallow cutout. Then I cut through just the front panel of this folded edge and cut this out. And this leaves the front collar. So the back collar always needs to be higher than the front collar, and this will give you your collar. And of course, then I just cut down this line that I made to make the V. So this opens up now. So the collar is done. So my sleeve markings are here, and I'm going to be cutting for seam allowance. So I'm going to mark about, this is like 2 centimeters out, and I'll cut along this line. Now you should have a rectangle cut to your measurements, which are your shoulder to mid-calf and your mid-chest to wrist. Next, you should measure from your shoulder seam where you want your sleeve to end. I chose 25 centimeters, and from this point, mark an arc towards the body, which will be cut out. After cutting, this is what your pattern will look like, and this is how mine turned out. Now you might think this is when we start sewing, but actually you have to pin, and then pin some more. And then finally, when you're done with all that pinning, you can start sewing. I chose to hand sew my collar first because I feel like it gives me more control than if I were to sew with a machine. And then I decided to move on to the side seams, which I chose to be French seams. So for beginner sewers, French seams may seem a little weird because instead of sewing the seams inside out, you start right side in. But believe me, it's not as intimidating as you think it is. It's actually really easy. First, you want to sew your piece right sides in, and you sew this flat. After this, you want to cut the raw edge close to the seam line. And lastly, now you want to turn your piece inside out and sew again. Once you turn your piece right side out, you will have a very clean and strong seam that will hold for a very long time. So I realized I just made a mistake because there is like this open slit at the bottom of like the clothes that enkidu wears, and I wanted to save time, so I made this a French seam instead of 2 rolled hems sewn together into a seam. So now this is completely closed all the way to the hem. And I don't know what I'm gonna do. Canon compliant or not, we soldier on. My next step was to draft the kind of collar looking thing that is around enkidu's actual neck collar. So I traced this by putting the poncho that I had already worn underneath a spare piece of fabric and then just using the ridge that I felt through that fabric to trace out where the opening would be. Then I traced out the mock-up collar that I got onto another piece of fabric that was bigger so that I knew what size I wanted it to be. Making sure that the sides mirrored each other, I folded it in half like I have been doing throughout this entire project and cut it out. Of course, I had to cut out 2 of these and then sew them together so that I have any raw edges that might be exposed on the inside, because we do not like raw edges here. We want a clean look. This might be $20, but we're not going to make it look like it was made cheaply. We are putting our whole Swarovski into this. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, so I pinned it and sewed it up, and the color ended up looking pretty good. So I pinned that to the actual poncho and sewed that together. So enkidu has this cute little button that connects both halves of their collar together, and I wasn't really sure what size I wanted to go with, so I was debating for a little bit, but I decided to go with a bigger size because I think it just would be more proportionate for the entire costume that I was making. So, of course, my buttons that I have in my kit are not white. So instead of getting a new button, because this is a budget cosplay, I decided to cover them in fabric myself. So what I did is I cut out a small circle that was a little bit bigger around the button, sewed a running stitch through the edges of it, and then pulled it taut around the button. Obviously, I added a little bit of glue on the back of this just to make it a little bit more secure, and then I sewed it onto my costume. And then rather than making a buttonhole, I didn't really want to threaten the structural integrity of my fabric since I had already so much tension going on around the collar. So I decided to sew a clasp on instead, and then that's how this collar is fixed. So for this costume, I didn't record the sewing of the pants that I made because honestly, I didn't do any drafting for them. I used this pattern that I already have to make the pants, which were super easy. I made them in like a few hours. So I did that all off camera, and they are here. They look great. I will probably wear them as pajama pants as well because they're really comfortable. And I didn't buy any elastic for these pants because, you know, it's a budget cosplay. So instead what I did is I took the elastic out of the corners of the fitted sheet and sewed that together, and that makes up the elastic band that are on these pants. Moving on to the last part of this cosplay, which is the kind of necklace thing that Enkidu wears. I wasn't really precise with it at all. This was all vibes, honestly. I decided to measure 6 centimeters of a strip of fabric, which I cut out, and then I just ripped along this, like the seam grain to make it easier so that I knew it was even. Then I used the little trick of sticking a safety pin on the end to turn it inside out, and I just sewed up the edges of it, and then it was done. For the actual kind of gold details of this cosplay, I decided to buy polymer clay, which was already in a gold color itself, and I sculpted that and then baked it. With the end of it, the little, I don't know, charm that's on the end, I decided to make like kind of a divot in it where I would be able to hot glue everything into place. And that is kind of what I did. I just, instead of sewing the rest of it, I was kind of sick of sewing, so I decided to hot glue everything. And that is it. After I was done sewing, I decided to give this cosplay a good press, and it's on to the reveal. So we are on Cosplanner, and this cosplay is 100% finished. Ignore the fact that it says I have the wig. I don't have the wig, but in order to complete a costume on Cosplanner, you have to complete all the parts, so we're lying today, but it's fine. So rundown of the cost, just in general, I spent $11 on fabric, $2.40 on the polymer clay, and I may have kind of cheated a little bit. I had this like bolt of fabric that I had bought in the past, which was $15, but I didn't use the whole thing. I only used a strip. So what I did is I did like cut off the strip, measured the size of the strip, did some crazy math calculations, you know, multiply, divide, percentage, all those things. And then I came up with the price that the strip itself cost me 60 cents. Adding up all of these prices, in the end, this cosplay cost me, drumroll please, $14. I'm super happy. But obviously that does not account for all of the things that cost money when making cosplay. So what are we gonna do? I logged my work hours. So overall, this cosplay took me 16 hours and 30 minutes to make, which is way longer than I thought it was going to take me. It's kind of embarrassing. When I first like mapped out this cosplay in my head, I thought it was going to take me 6 hours. It did not take me 6 hours. It took me 16. For only 16 and a half hours of work was $330, charging $20 an hour. That's a lot. That's more than I thought it was going to be. Taking all of this into account, there are real people who make mass-produced cosplays. Their work is so undervalued, much like in fast fashion, in just our general consumers world. Things are undervalued extremely low for the craftsmanship that goes into it. People, like when you buy clothes, These clothes are not just sewn by a machine, they're sewn by people. So next time you go to an anime convention or even put on your clothing fit for the day, I would encourage you to just be mindful of where your things come from and the work that has gone into making them. Overall, I am so happy with how this cosplay turned out. I think that this challenge was really fun, and it's definitely one that I will take on again in the future. This cosplay is by no means perfect. There are some little details, some fabric that just doesn't sit right, things that I forgot to add, but this challenge in itself was about sustainability, and I really had fun throughout the process, and I think that's what matters the most. If you have any ideas for cosplays that you want me to make in the future, any $20 cosplays that you think would be really easy for me to make, leave those comments down below and I will make sure to look at them. Of course, if you like the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and maybe send it to some of your cosplay friends. Maybe they'd like this video too, and maybe they would want to take on the challenge as well. All of my links for my social media are down in the description below, so if you want to find me on, say, Instagram, TikTok, Rednote, you can find me there. Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!